Here we go. Maybe I'll start off with ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. No, just kidding. Welcome. This is the first episode of the working title is The Good Life. I'm your host, Matthew Rawlins. This is my honorary guest, Zack Jackson, for the inaugural show. So at first I'll introduce my guest, and we'll talk a little about the show that's coming. So
excited.
Zack Jackson, he studied health sciences back in college. He is now an electrician. He's got a brilliant mind for picking up, learning things quickly. He's a phenomenal athlete. I've watched him be able to become quite an expert at most sports, volleyball, basketball,
all the sports, really.
Way more athletic than I am. But Zack has a mind for being able to think through things critically, look at things from multiple perspectives, and that's one of the things for launching off the first show. Zack and I, over the years, have had a lot of dialogues, discussions, and Zack has a capacity to think critically, look at things from different angles, and that's one of the things I appreciate is that we're able to have those kind of conversations. Zack also, in terms of quality of person, for the important people in Zack's life, Zack will go out of his way, rain or shine, to show up and help out those that care about him. And I think sometimes you have accolades of what a person has done, which Zack has those, but also equally important is the caliber of character, which Zack has highly. So Zack, thank you for being my first guest on The Good Life.
Thank you, Matthew.
Yes.
Thank you.
So working on my intros, but that's
no, that's good. That's good. I feel honored. I feel fluffed up a little bit, so thank you. And I just want to say, we've been through a lot of life together, many different seasons, from when we first both had dreads.
We did.
In 2008, took a couple photo shoots, through some seasons of life, you going to Bethel, traveling the world, you being an entrepreneur, now, walking through some relationships, you know what I'm saying?
I understand.
And now, you being married, and in this new exciting season of life, and here we are.
Here we are. Yeah, Zack is a good friend, been a good friend for a long time. So, I thought I would kick off with kind of the vision for the show and our audience of one or two people. But I thought I would kick off with some of the vision of the show, and then we just dive in. So the vision for the show was I in the last years I feel like I've been lacking meaning, purpose in my life. I feel like I haven't had something in my life where I'm pumped, I'm excited for this. I love this thing that I'm doing and this work that I'm doing. And so just realizing for myself, I want to have something in my life, even if I don't get paid for it. I think sometimes in the past I would get hung up on how can I monetize this, or how can I make this a job.
Right.
But I was I want to have something in my life that I'm just excited for, that I love, that it's taking my skills and giftings and it's something that I really enjoy. And so every year I try and get away for kind of a spiritual renewal retreat. I go alone. It looks different every year. Sometimes I will review my calendar from the last year. I'm praying. Sometimes I got music, journaling. Sometimes I read a book, whatever. I just I get away. I connect with God, pray, and just kind of catch vision for the future and reflect on the past year. And so a year ago, last March, I went away for my solo retreat, and I was reading in Ephesians, and I kind of stuck on this verse. I love Ephesians, by the way. I stuck on this verse that said where it says, for we are God's workmanship, or masterpiece, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. And so I was just kind of praying, I was because I'm a big, dreamer, goal setter, right. But I was okay, God, what would it look like just walk in obedience? What are the good works that you've made me to do? What is that? And there's two things, and one of them, I felt he said, hey, you're a voice, and he kind of spoke to me around, communicating and being a voice and bringing energy and inspiration and a space where we can kind of awaken and so I felt he said, hey, start a YouTube show and just go for it.
Last year.
Yeah, last year. Yeah, so
And it's just now happening.
just not happening. Yeah, things take time.
Like a whole year later.
Disobedience.
Okay.
No.
Your words, not mine.
Yeah. Disobedience. What are they? Delayed obedience and disobedience. No, but so things take time. So so in part it's that the push of like, and I think it's been something like this has been in my heart for years. I have a channel that I labeled, a YouTube channel that with no videos on, that I labeled A Good Life like probably a decade ago. I just like reserved it.
Yeah.
And so in part, so that's kind of the push. Like, okay, I just think there's for me something around like something that's meaningful, that feels like full of mission and purpose and drive is having like dynamic conversations. Like I want to create more things in my life where my energy level lifts. And so I've recently been digging into flow, where they talk about that sweet spot where your focus and your skill sets collide, and you're kind of in this effortless zone. Artists experience this, like extreme athletes, and really everyone can experience that, where you're just like, you lose track of time and space.
In the zone?
Yeah. They call it flow, but that's one label for it. But yeah, it's like when you're in the zone.
Okay. Yeah.
And you might, as an electrician, experience it sometimes where like you're working on a problem that's just challenging enough, and like then like hours went by and you were just like working and like
well, for me, a lot of what I do, especially if you're doing commercial work, it's very repetitive.
Okay.
So a lot of times you can just, in some ways, turn your brain off and then just keep on chugging along.
Totally.
For 8 hours.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah.
So.
And they actually, so getting that a little bit, but totally. So I think for me it was like, okay, one of the places that I feel, I try to identify a few areas, like where do I feel like I'm in the flow when my energy comes up and I'm in the zone, like I'm giving the best of who I am.
Yeah.
And it was like, and the YouTube like show is kind of the embodiment of that. Like I was like, I want to have an intentional space where I bring in friends and experts and people, and we just have like dynamic conversations where we talk about God and life and relationships and wealth and everything. Right. And I know that like you and I have had a lot of those conversations where we just kind of get into it and we're just like, whoa, and when we're ripping on like what do we want to do with our life and who do we want to become and who is God. So that was for me. It's like even if no one ever watches these episodes,
which is very possible.
Highly probable, it's like, to me, I'm like, just being able to have a context where we throw a camera up and we're like, hey, let's get into it. So that was the impetus for me, and so I'm pumped to have you join me for this first one, because I think it'll just be fun. And we'll kind of, so I'm like, it'll keep evolving. The working title is like The Good Life, because for me, I'm like, sometimes we always want to have like more extreme terminology, like the radical life, the ultra.
The best life you could ever dream of in your dreams.
Yeah, the ultra life. But I'm like, to me, the word good is like the embodiment of like a life that is fulfilling, a life that is full of contentment, a life that in your relationships and finances and spirituality and everything that you're like, man, this is like a good life. And I feel like for a decade or two now, like that's what I've been in search of, is like, I guess like practical wisdom, like how do I live life well, right? I don't need to be famous. Like I talk about being rich, like I actually don't even need to be rich. I'm just like, I just want a life where I'm like, man, I feel so much peace, so much love, so much fulfillment. So so that's kind of the impetus for the show. And so
so for me it's really interesting because you called me last week, and just a day or two before you called me, for the first time in my whole entire 35 years of life, I was listening to a podcast, and then I took a shower, and I just put it in the shower and listened to it while I was in the shower, which is kind of weird, right? Like, who does that? But for me, I was thinking about, I was like, dude, the conversation that they were having was deep, was enlightening, it was challenging, and I thought to myself, I want to be a part of conversations like this, that go deep, that are intelligent, because our day-to-day conversations are not usually that, They're just about volleyball or about the day-to-day workings, and it's relatively shallow. But I was like, I would really value this and would like to be, I don't know exactly how to be, I would like to be part of the podcast. And then literally like 1 or 2 days later, you called me, and I was like, oh, I think some synchronicity, some manifestation, some direction and guidance. And so I feel like it's something that is supposed to be, and I hope that even maybe it can be an ongoing thing between us.
Totally, no, I would love to rip into a few. And so I think, and it's just going to be evolving. It's like, I think so I guess in terms, in part, like thinking about audience, like who's my audience? because sometimes like when you're putting something out online, you want to kind of curtail it, like, oh, this is a business, and I'm going to start with YouTube and then maybe eventually rip audio files and do podcasts. But like, okay, this is a business podcast, a business YouTube, so I need to kind of have everything framed up around that, like, and because people need to see me as a business expert or whatever. But I think for me, it's like I'm such like a student of life. I'm fascinated and curious by so many things that I think and it's like, hey, we'll get into our spirituality but like I think for me, I'm like I want people that my audience is like, hey, if you are someone that is like fascinated by life and down to have like conversations that are critical thinking and creative and can like you're connecting with someone and you're looking at it from all perspectives and you're just having an open, friendly dialogue. Like those are the kind of people that I want, and I don't care what religion, faith, orientation they come from in their space, because I think something for me, and it'd be interesting to see what you think, is like so much in our culture, like deep, heady things are discussed over like 2-minute clips, a tweet, an Instagram post, and that's why I really appreciate like Joe Rogan's YouTube show or I guess Spotify show now or whatever. But guys like Tim Ferriss, Joe Rogan, where they have like long form, 2 or 3 hour things where they just have time to unpack things and like a glass of wine, like let it breathe. And so I think that's my heart too. Is I'm like, hey, I just want to have a space where like whether it's 15 minutes or 3 hours, like where we can unpack, like there's so many things that are so emotionally like hyped up in our culture right now that I think that it's like, hey, I want to create a space where we can just like talk about it even if we disagree and just kind of like explore perspectives.
No, I love that, and I've never actually listened to a Joe Rogan. I've been recommended it a handful of times.
I love Joe.
Please give us money. Hit us money. You're gonna have a Venmo account. Send it to me too. I've never actually listened to one of those things, but I've just seen little clips of different podcasts. And so, but I think that me and you, over the course of our relationship, last 10, 15 years, have had these type of conversations that are 1, 2, 3 hours. You know, where we're still jamming, and maybe we'll jam on it the next day or talk to it later in the week. So I think that me and you have a natural tendency to do that, and then also like, our energy and ideas kind of build off each other often. So
totally. I'm still this is our first episode, so I'm still I'm making sure I don't slip out of the frame. So we're still figuring it out. Well, to some degree, I just kind of want to like let it flow. There's some things that I could rip into, but is there anything off the cuff that you're like, man, this is on my heart, I'm thinking about this, it's been something, whatever, in my mind, life, heart, relationships, that I just want to open the floor to you, otherwise I can also kind of throw us in a few places.
I guess there is one thing.
Cool.
I've been talking with a guy, Tim Walters,
okay,
who is on staff at YWAM in Salem, stands for Youth with a Mission.
Cool.
And he was kind of like, he's like, I wake up every day excited for what I do. I know that's something that you've talked about a lot. You're like, I just want to wake up, and I just want to wake up before my alarm goes off and have this, what I'll call magic. You have this magic and just be excited and ready to go, And I think for me, overall in my life, I feel, at least not including the last 2 years, overall I feel pretty like, I don't know if excited is the right word, but maybe confident or comfortable or whatever it is, where it's like I wake up, I know I have a purpose, I know what I'm doing, and that doesn't mean I necessarily know all the details, but he's kind of asking me like, hey, what are the things that make you kind of come alive and make you want to wake up in the morning? And I was like, you know what? It's kind of like being there for people and helping see them grow, And for me, it's so hard to actually, and rare to see people grow. And it's kind of like a little bit like when you're planting a seed, it's like, is it gonna actually sprout? Is it gonna actually grow into something? Is it gonna actually have fruit? Or will it just kind of fizzle out and do nothing, And so in my experience working with youth, working with kids, working with people, it's one of the most satisfaction you can have in life when you see someone like overcome a fear they've been struggling with their whole life, My number one example I think of is actually a mission trip that me and you went on together to San Francisco.
Yep.
And there was this huge kid, 300 pounds, Zach. Do you remember him? Big Zach.
I think so.
Okay,
yeah,
it is.
Yeah,
he was the biggest kid.
Yeah.
He was the biggest person on the trip, And we get off the bus. We ride a bus from Salem to San Francisco. We're in the Haight District, like right downtown. It's ghetto.
Yeah.
There's homeless people everywhere, and just people. We saw people smoking crack as we're pulling up on the bus. They just walk across the street like it's their home, and that might not be politically correct, but they just walk across the street. It was like a third world country almost, where the YWAM base was in San Francisco. And the kids were scared. And if I'm being fully honest, I was a little scared too. But I grew up in Tacoma on the east side, and so it's like I've been around situations like this. I'm an adult, I'm a leader, and so I was like, all right, here we go. And I was one of the first people off the bus, if not the first, right?
Yeah.
And that night, the kids were scared to get off the bus. They're from suburbia Salem, they don't know anything.
Yeah.
And so they were scared to get off the bus.
Oh man.
And I remember getting off the bus and Zach getting off, and that night we went out to give out hot cocoa and coffee and just talk with people and pray for people. And I remember Zach being like, I'm coming with you, Zach, because he was scared. And at the end of the week, he had this transformation and he was like, I'm not scared anymore.
Come on.
And I just remember that hit me. I was just like, dude, that's what this is all about. Even life is overcoming those fears, overcoming the things that are holding you back. And for me, I was probably 20 at the time or something. It's like, dude, this is what I want out of life,
Yeah.
And so I think for you, and kind of when you're talking about the good life, it's like, what are those things that make you in the morning, I'm going to get up before my alarm goes off, and I'm excited, I'm ready to go, I'm ready to hit it, you know?
Come on, man.
And so, so what are some of those things for you, Matt?
I love it. No, and I remember was that the one where we were on the houseboats?
Yeah.
Houseboats. We did a skit. Were you in the skit team?
I don't remember.
Okay, I know it was Jason Elwood, myself, and a couple others. But no, I remember that trip. And no, I think totally what you're saying. The other thing for me that juices me is in kind of the coaching space, working with people, helping people space. When I see someone have that aha moment.
Right.
So similar to what you're saying. When I see someone have that aha moment, or I get to be a part of that, I see them take one step closer to being a fuller version of who they are.
Who they were created to be.
Yeah.
Right.
It juices me, man.
Right.
It juices me. I think. So the other thing that I'm doing now is just kind of calling whiteboard sessions, something that I found that I really love, when I'm using a bunch of paper, and I've done it with people sometimes where I'll people just start talking, and maybe they're talking about a problem they have, or a goal or a dream they have, an obstacle or something, and I'll just start whiteboarding out what they're saying, drawing patterns, connections.
Are they seeing it at the same time as you are?
Sometimes they can be, or sometimes it's on the phone, and it's just I get into that flow where I'm looking at I can begin to see the map and the strategic layout and the patterns and connections, and so
it's kind of In a Beautiful Mind, where he's writing on
and all the mathematical equations are swirling around his head. Yes, except I can't say that I'm that brilliant, but it brings me a lot of joy. So it's similar to that place of when people have their aha moment.
Right. So and you recently, I think, just finished a course about coaching, and you've actually worked as a coach, and your uncle.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. So so I worked with my uncle's consulting company, Green Bench Consulting, and that was a really good experience. It was it's a boutique consulting company, so it gave me hands-on experience to kind of see. I worked more the business development of, so I began to learn a lot about sales and marketing, and used a lot of Russell Brunson's ClickFunnels stuff, which is really cool for online entrepreneurs. But so that was cool to learn from him in the some of the coaching consulting space. But I just recently was in ClickFunnels high-end coaching program for entrepreneurs, learning sales, marketing, online strategy.
How long have you been an entrepreneur? Did it start with the marketing company?
I think I started in. I'm trying to think my first kind of entrepreneurial. It might have been my first big entrepreneurship push might have been like 2015 when I built the publication.
Right.
So probably like 2015 was the first time. I think I'd been even before that, like read Tim Ferriss's book, like 4 Hour Work Week and Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Right.
So I think before I'd still been like kind of like, how do you do this? Like how do you like create passive income and like create wealth and like detach your time from your money?
Yeah.
But I don't remember what else. Yeah, but yeah. So that, I think that was kind of my.
So you've been doing it for at least 7 years, like actual, like for sure you've been doing it.
Yeah.
Even if you were learning about it before that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, for at least 7 years, like building and practicing, like ebb and flow between different jobs. But yeah, so totally. I've had a number of different coaching clients, and then have been in a coaching program myself. And I mean, it like. Yeah, no, that's a different. I could go to a different side note, but yeah. So I love that space of like getting to help people, whether it's mentoring or just being a friend or like officially coaching. So yeah.
So for me, one of the most maybe kind of fulfilling things, because one of the things about that space where you're coaching or supporting your friends or supporting people is. It's kind of a thankless job, and you don't often see results. You know,
totally.
And so, just finding the satisfaction, or just knowing, like in your heart or mind, like, hey, I'm here for people. I'm supporting them. I'm here the in and the out, the weekly calls, the daily practices, and there for them. And so this is one thing that's been on my heart. Is like in this last like 2 or 3 weeks, there's like, all right, maybe I'll go a little more, 2 or 3 months. There's been like 4 or 5 people that I know that are going through divorces, right? And multiple, like 2 out of them have kids, which makes it that much messier, you know? You know, there's different kinds and levels and types of abuse. And so that's something that's been like on my heart. It's like, dude, how can I be here for people? What do I think? What do I think Jesus would be, or how would he be, or act in this situation? And can I just be like a good friend to these people with no expectations? And just be present in their pain. And also, my goal and one of my things, like speaking encouragement and truth and life into their lives as well. You know. So that's something that's really been on my heart, especially in the last few weeks, because just like seems like person after person after person, you know, and it's like, dude, this sucks, and that's something that I never want for my life. I know it's not something that you ever want for your life, you know. No one gets married thinking, maybe I'll be a single parent in a couple years, you know. Totally. You know, or maybe we'll divorce after a few years, and you know, so man.
Totally. Even in the rockiest of people's lives, like no one gets married being like, I can probably get divorced in a couple of years. That sounds like a good idea.
I don't see this lasting.
No, I'm sure people have doubts and stuff, but no, and you bring up a good point. Like the other part of, just like I think a full life, a good life, is friendship. Like being a good friend. Like I think that I so value. Like I want to be a good friend. And I think like. Man, when you get when I'm like 100 years old, looking back.
That's bold that you think you're gonna live that long.
I'm gonna live forever. I'm gonna live forever. But yeah, like we could say 90. That makes it better. Ageist? No, I'm just kidding. So you know, when I'm 90, you know, looking back on my life, so there's some of the things that are like so important, but maybe don't have as much accolades, and it's like. You know, it's like, man, when I look back on my life, I want to be like, man, I was a good father. And that's hard because, like, I can see, like, the amount of sacrifice that it takes to be a good father, to, like, let go of maybe some career ambitions. But, like, so, like, man, I want to be a good father. I want to be a good husband. I want to be a good friend. Like, and that friend piece of, like, dude, it's such a, I know that, like, I so value friends that show up in my life. I think that's something that I value about you is that, like, hey, I lived outside of town for a number of years. Like, we lived like a few miles outside of Salem, and it's like, hey, it was never a thing. You were one of like the few friends. Like, I really had a couple friends that ever like came out to Donzo, and like it was never a thing with you. You know, you'd drive out, you'd have dinner with my family, and it was a small thing. It was like, oh, that like Zach isn't like making it a deal about like not wanting to come out and make the drive or blah blah blah. And so yeah. Anyways, I think in that space of like, man, being a good friend, and that's like, I think that's like what makes life so rich is like you get 30, 40 years down the road and to be like, wow, I've walked through debt and divorce and death with this friend decades later. Like that's like I've seen that in my parents' lives. Them walk through with 3 or 4 families like 4 decades. You know, it's like wow. Like and you might have a decade dip or something. It was like, anyways, it's crazy.
Yeah, the ups, the downs, the flows.
Yeah.
And so for me, one thing I've been talking with my friends about that is like because they have an issue with some certain things that are considered like stereotypical Christian norms, you know, or that's emotionally charged in the media or whatever. And it's like, hey, listen, even if I don't agree with you or your lifestyle, Jesus is a friend of sinners. And he was hanging out with the sinners, whatever that means. What I take that as, if I were to take from 2,000 years ago to today, 2,000 years ago, there's probably prostitutes, the tax collectors, the lowest people in society that everyone looked down. And that's one of the issues they had with Jesus. They're like, look who he's hanging out with. He's eating and drinking with these people, you know? And so whatever that means today, like even if he didn't agree with their lifestyle, he's not saying, oh, prostitution's okay, you know? But he's like, hey, I'm still your friend. And I can disagree with your lifestyle or your lifestyle style choices and still be your friend. And we can still want to be around each other, you know? And so for me, like that's how I want to live my life. Like I don't have to agree with everything you're doing. That's fine. You can identify however you want, be however you want, change whatever you want. We can still be friends. And I think that's how Jesus is. And I think that's how he wants us to be. But too often what we see in the media is Westboro Baptist Church who says God hates gays and they go to military people's funerals and protest it, you know, and say, oh, you're burning in hell. And it's like, that's what most people see Christianity as, like these hateful, spiteful people. It's like, no, that's a very, very, very small percentage of the worst type of people who, I mean, I'm not judging people, but they're probably not even Christian, you know, that's not the love of God, that's not a friend of sinners. You're missing the point. You know?
Totally. And were you saying you had one of your friends who's getting divorced, you're saying, or like another friend that was talking about like, oh, I disagree with?
Well, yeah, it is one of my friends who's getting divorced, but that we were talking about other things too, you know.
Around that space.
Yeah.
No, and I think that's like one of the things in our culture today, and it's like, I don't know, maybe it's kind of cliche, but, and even, you know, them talking about, even just how the algorithms in Facebook and Instagram continue to feed you stuff
to polarize.
Yeah, they're like the more extreme things, because for sure, if I see like the crazier things I see on Facebook or Instagram, I'm like, oh, you have my attention. So it's like
Will Smith slapped who?
Right? It's like whoa, show me every different angle, and then so totally. So I think like some of the hard thing about like the polarizing space that we're in our like. In the now moment that we're in is like it's like it feels very much like a war. Like you've got to choose a side, and it even feels like you like not even just you need to choose a side on each topic, but that it's like, hey, you need to choose. And maybe that's like identity politics. But like, hey, you need to either decide. Are you a Democrat or a Republican? And then from there, you know what you believe.
We're gonna tell you what you believe because we're all the same.
Which is like, hold on, like these things are so. Just I think in that space, like I'm very much like I want to have like thoughtful, heartful conversations about everything, and I don't want to be pigeonholed like. You know, because so I don't want to be. So I want to create space where we can begin to talk about things instead of just like you're saying, like, oh, hey, we're different. We don't have the same religious beliefs. We don't have the same faith, the same political beliefs. So we have to be. And he's like, why can't we just? That's one of the things I appreciate about like Bill Maher on his show is like
I don't know who Bill Maher is.
Okay, so he's a comedian. He's on HBO. So he's like Bill Maher.
M-A-R?
Yeah, I know it's M-A-H-E-R.
Oh, okay.
So
Mayor, not Mayor?
That it would look like that.
Okay.
It would look M-A-H-E-R. Yeah, okay. but pronounced Bill Maher. So he's I mean he's more. I guess he's probably more liberal. But one thing I appreciate that is rare. And I think he would primarily say like he's a comedian, but like an intelligent comedian and also like really creates more of like a talk show experience.
Sure.
But what he does is most of the time is he'll have people, 4 to 6 people that are like come from like divergent opinions.
Mm-hmm.
So he might have like Ben Shapiro and his counter, and it's like it's one of the only places that you're gonna find where like people that are like on complete opposite views are gonna sit down and have a civilized conversation.
Okay, yeah.
And then afterwards, like, hey, we can disagree. We'll go grab a beer afterwards. Like
Right.
Jordan
We can
Peterson.
still be friends.
Exactly. Like
Right.
Jordan Peterson can be on there and someone else. And it's like, and what Bill Maher, what I appreciate even when he does his one-on-one things, like I think him and Ben Shapiro had a one-on-one, and he was like, hey, look, let's thanks for coming on. Let's talk about the things that we agree about, and let's talk about the things we disagree about. And I think that's the other thing is sometimes it feels like, hey, if we disagree on this hot topic,
Right.
then we have to disagree on everything.
Right.
Versus like, we are in one of the most affluent countries in the world.
Right.
We're all Americans, we live in a democratic, capitalistic society, so like, we actually, even like the farthest reaching people, like you actually have probably more in common with
Right.
each other
Right.
than someone from like a socialist country or whatever. So anyways, I appreciated that about him because he was like, hey, let's first talk about what we agree about. We
Right.
agree about some really fundamental things.
Right.
Now let's talk about some things we disagree about.
Yeah.
Anyways, it's much more nuanced and it's a much more fascinating conversation.
Well, yeah, so I actually was watching a little bit of a video, which I've never seen any, the memes of the guy who's like, prove me wrong. He goes to college campuses and he has a coffee
It's
cup. And
who is it? It's
Steven Crowder?
Yeah, Louder with Crowder.
Yeah, and I've only seen the memes. I've never actually watched any of those
Yeah.
things before, you know?
Yeah.
But, you know, people make fun of the memes. They
Yeah.
have something that's like hilarious.
Yeah.
So it just came up on my YouTube
Yeah.
feed today, and I started watching one of them, and they were talking about gender
Yeah.
and identity and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And it was really cool to see this college guy
Yeah.
talk with him, and it was refreshing to see
Yeah.
like they disagree on some points, but also, you know, they're able to concede and be like, oh,
Yeah.
or actually we do agree on this,
Yeah.
and let's talk about the part of it that we disagree
Yeah.
about, and
Yeah.
actually just not have to always be right or
Right.
always be, but just be like, oh, we're having a conversation.
Yeah.
In a normal conversation with me and you,
Yeah.
well, with me and you, I'm always right, so it's a little different, but just with like two normal
Edit that out. Cut! Trim!
but with two normal people.
Exactly. It's been so great, and this is your first and last episode, and just any last words, final words that you want to say to the audience that you'll never talk to them. Yeah.
With two normal people, like, sometimes you're wrong, and,
Yeah.
and being able to admit that
Yeah.
is good, you
Yeah.
know? And
Yeah.
it's okay if we disagree on this other thing, we can disagree and still be simple, you know? And
Totally.
especially maybe in Portland or the West Coast or just today's day and age, it's like, no, you guys, we only hate you people, you
Yeah.
know, it's like us versus them,
Yeah.
and it's so extreme,
Yeah.
and it doesn't need to be,
Yeah.
you know?
Come on, man. And Steven Crowder, he does have some interesting stuff. I feel like he's a little bit more like inflammatory and antagonistic than I
sure.
find like productive.
Oh.
But I've definitely watched the stuff. Like it's
I've only
definitely-
seen 10 minutes of it today, you know?
It's definitely fascinating. I think sometimes what is like, in terms of like, you know, like a UFC match, like they're equal weights, they're equal, like,
Yeah.
I think sometimes what is unfair is he comes in like
Researched.
research,
Yeah.
and what he'll do
Just
is,
fully armed to the teeth.
yeah, like a freshman college student is like, and what he'll do is he'll like, you know, he'll have a book of like facts that they can look up.
Yeah.
But he's like, well, can you empirically, evidentially prove to me? And I'm like,
Oh.
come on, man, like you're talking about like you are like thoroughly versed in this.
Right.
And then someone.
You're talking to some
Yeah.
19-year-old random kid, basically, right?
Yeah, it would be like if you like trained in like jujitsu for 10 years and then you're like, hey, hop in the ring with me, man. Like it'll be a fair fight. It'll be a rep. It's like, yeah. So, but no, he has ways. He's definitely like, yeah, a little bit like antagonistic, but
Sure.
you had said something that made me. I don't know, it was good, but you said something that made me think, but
I say a lot of things that make you think, man.
true, yeah, no, it's true, yeah. No, yeah, yeah, just touching on the like, yeah, we can, oh, that's what it was. I think that, you know, sometimes like politicians feel this way, or like, or people that have a platform of like, I always have to be right, and I can never be wrong, and if
Or
I'm
I can't admit that I'm wrong, right.
And it's like, we want to create, I think we also want to create an environment where, like, and I hope to like foster this in my life where like, hey, I have deep convictions about a few things, and then I have like evolving, working like theories on things,
Right.
and then as I grow, I can be like, hey, I was wrong on that.
Right.
Here's why I was wrong, and here's why like I'm totally cool to admit that.
Right.
And because sometimes you can be like, wait, like they'll do this with politicians, like, wait. Let's say they're trying to like nominate them to the Supreme Court. Like 14 years ago, it's like, yeah, don't you think that they might have, dear God, evolved in the last
learned as a person,
like in the last 14 years? So, sometimes it seems like politicians have to just like, I always voted for this, like, because for me, I'm like, dude, issues are so complex. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know. Here's like my best working hypothesis on why Will slapped Chris, and that's going to evolve for the next 72 hours and 10 years, because I don't know.
Right, and that's why I think, too, is like, with where we're at now with cancel culture, especially, it's like people trying to avoid that. But I think that's been longer than cancel culture.
Yeah.
But I think it'll be interesting to see with Will Smith and Chris Rock, like, how it evolves and what it ends up being, because it seems like they both apologize. I don't really know that much about it, but it seems like they both apologize and just kind of see what the ramifications are, the repercussions, and the consequences end up being for both of them, long term. Yeah. And living in this day and age where it's like, it's not normal for people to have heartfelt apologies. But the thing is, even when people do have heartfelt apologies, a lot of times people are like, no, you can't even, it's too late. You know, you said the thing, you're done, you're canceled, Yeah. And so, like, I think it's going to be really interesting, like, what ends up happening. I don't think it's going to really damage either one of their careers. Right.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah, it will be interesting. And I think someone brought up the interesting element of like, hey, that's why like forgiveness and redemption is such an important virtue. Mm-hmm. And there's sometimes it's like it's not, sometimes we want to look at like an either or, but a both and of like, how can we have like justice and mercy? Like, hey, something bad, someone did something wrong. Yeah. And we want to expose that, and then we should have justice, and that should look at a variety of things, but then also like, how do we also as a culture incorporate like forgiveness and redemption, that like people, like bad people do good things, good people do bad things. Sometimes it's not as simple.
Perfect.
Yeah, sometimes it's not as simple as like, and there's not an excuse, but it's like, how do we as humanity like find a path of like redemption and forgiveness of like, hey, like Zach, you like, or maybe you towards me like, hey Matthew, you did a really terrible thing to me a year ago, like I just want you to know, like I forgive you and I love you, and
that hurt me.
Yeah, that hurt me. And here's what, hey, like last word on it. What's that word where it's you make it right?
Redemption.
No, we're like
reconciliation.
Where like if someone will bring words, English words. Where if someone like breaks something, the law will like, hey, you need to do
it's kind of like reparations.
Something like that, reparations, or it's like you need to basically like go back and fix that. It's like I think sometimes there is a place for reparations, or like to make things right. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. I think love and forgiveness. Yeah. I took a Bible as literature class in the public high school. Yeah. Franklin Pierce, Tacoma, Washington. Shout out. And
TAC.
And our
TAC law. I don't know what they're like.
Our teacher, Mr. Odesky, which it's crazy that I still remember his name.
Shout out.
Shout out. If you're still alive, you were the man.
You're still kicking. Mr. Odesky.
He would say, hey, and it's not like you can really preach or teach in the Bible. Like I still to this day don't know. Like I think he was Jewish, maybe.
Okay.
I don't know.
Public high school. Like,
public high school. I don't know what his religious affiliation was. Yeah. But he was like, the whole Bible can be summed up in these two words: love and forgiveness. Yeah. And I've never forgotten that. If you ask someone to summarize the Bible in a word or two, who knows what they'll say? God and wrath, or you know, like people's views of it are so twisted. Yeah. But to me, it's like that's something I've carried with me. Almost 20 years later, of like, love and forgiveness. This is where my focus should be. This is what this book teaches. And the forgiveness part is, you're right, something that we don't see very much in our culture. We don't create space for it. It's not important in our culture. It's just like, dude, if you screw up once, you're done. You're canceled. Yeah. You know?
So, and that's where like I think like no relationship, no marriage, no friendship can
Right.
survive without
Right.
like forgiveness. Like we can be like, let's say today was like day one of our friendship,
Yeah.
and we're like, hey, let's say, I don't know, let's say the government like paired you with a lifelong friend, and we're like, hey, we're gonna be friends for the rest of our life. Whatever. Besties. It's like we could almost set as a precedent, it's like, hey, I know at some point I'm gonna hurt you, accidentally or on purpose, and I know vice versa. Like, so the way that, like, one, it's like, hey, let's try to practice love,
Right.
but then knowing that at some point I'm going to break your trust, hurt you, do something. Like, how do we get back? And if there's no like relational like super glue,
Right.
And so like forgiveness is like the relational super glue. It's
Do
like,
you talk about that with your wife?
I think it's something we practice. I don't know
Yeah.
that we've talked a lot about forgiveness, but
Yeah.
I just got married a couple months ago. Shout out to my one true love. No, but I think like so like we try to very quickly
Right.
come back.
Right.
And like just, and to some degree I think it's also like similar like a state change. Like sometimes she'll come home after a long day of work, and like this happened probably a couple times this week, and we just had an off interaction.
Yeah.
And I like went to the bathroom, and I could feel it. I was like, I can like choose to like lean into this, like,
Right.
oh whatever.
Fight out.
Yeah, whatever. You don't you hurt my feelings.
Right.
Or I was like, I can actually literally like shake out
Yeah.
that feeling of like being hurt,
Right.
and like just
Engage.
yeah. And so I just went back out and I was like, hey, like we had an off moment. I'm not sure what happened. We missed each other. Like I would love to just like start fresh.
Yeah.
And go from there. She's like, me too. Let's do it.
Mhm.
And it's just, and I think sometimes as couples, right, they can like spend the rest of the evening like passive aggressive. And so
Right.
I think I would describe that as like coming like a quick state change. But I think it's like practical forgiveness of like I think forgiveness is like a releasing and a letting go.
Right.
And so that's where that comes.
No, yeah,
How
it's
does
those,
it look like
it's
for
those
you?
little things.
Yeah.
And I read article about a study that was done, and after seeing a couple together for 15 or 30 minutes, just their interactions,
Yeah.
they could tell with like,
The Love Lab with Dr. John Gottman.
I'm not sure,
Okay.
but they could tell with like 80 to 90% accuracy if that couple was still going to be together
Yeah.
like 7 years later
Yeah.
or 10 years later or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And what they said was the thing that they could tell was those little offenses. It
Mhm.
wasn't these big crazy
Yeah.
things like cheating and stuff. It was like when I talk with you
Yeah.
and you're reading the paper, do you just go huh or don't like respond, or do you stop what you're doing and give me your full attention and give me your full response?
Yeah.
And if both of the people were treating each other with those little things
Yeah.
of respect, that was the biggest indicator of whether that relationship was going to last. And so it's like
Yeah.
those little
Yeah.
things where it's like, oh, the seemingly little things, but
Yeah.
actually ends up being big things,
It's
right?
big, yeah.
Where it's like, oh, we just had a weird thing, like, hey, how you doing? And it's like, I didn't feel greeted or loved when I came in, which is something that's huge for me. Like
Yeah.
in my house, like when we came home from school, my mom would always give us a hug,
Yeah.
say I love you, I missed you, da da da. And so like now for me, my expectation as like I guess having a family or with my
Yeah.
close friends or whatever is like we greet each other, and that's like the baseline, you know.
Yeah.
So if I ever was in a relationship came home that wasn't
Yeah.
that, I would be offended. And,
Yeah.
you know, like if I
Yeah.
before, like, hey, when I come home, just
Yeah.
give me a hug. You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
to me, it's not a big deal. It's not
Yeah.
like anyone could do it. Like this
Yeah.
is my baseline, and I know not every family is like
Yeah.
that. But for me, I feel disrespected,
Yeah.
and I guess unloved if that's not our baseline. You
Yeah.
know? And
Totally.
being able to communicate that, to understand that, and then like. You're gonna have to keep reminding the person probably
Yeah.
too,
Yeah.
if that's not their natural thing to do. Like,
Yeah.
hey, when I see you, I
Yeah.
like to have a hug, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Totally, and that's like, it makes me think about, I did the, one time I did the Save Your Marriage Before It Starts, with,
is that a book?
it is, and then it was a course like with Dr. Les and Leslie Perry, out of Seattle. We broke up, so it worked out. Yeah. Save your marriage before it starts, or break your marriage before it starts. But no, I mean, so one of the things they talked about was like rules and roles, like
Yeah.
unspoken rules and roles. I think
Yeah.
that's so important of like to just be honest with like, because sometimes, you know, people can be like, oh, I don't have any expectations for whatever it is, like yeah, like no, I go with the flow, and it's like if you really don't, okay, but especially when we're coming into a marriage, like there's a lot of power in being like, hey, rules sounds funny, but it's like your code book for like,
Right.
and that's
Your script for how you.
yeah, like this
Right.
is how I code a relationship. Like this is how it was modeled in my family, and or whatever. So it's
Right.
like, hey, what are the roles that I feel are important for the man and the wife, the husband and the wife, or what are my rules for a relationship? And they even went through like, because we did this like comprehensive like intake survey.
Right.
So it was like, hey, who takes out the trash?
Right.
Who fills up the, and like maybe those don't matter, but putting those out there. So I
Talking
think,
about it.
yeah.
Communicating.
Whereas like, for instance, if you don't, to some degree, like, hey, it's on, like, if your feelings are hurt that your wife doesn't greet you,
Right.
it's like, it's on you until she knows.
Right.
And
You have to communicate.
And that's where sometimes people are like offended and hurt, but it's
Right.
like, I get it, but if you haven't shared that, you haven't given them the opportunity to make that right.
Right.
And then I think the other part is like, yeah, so I think there's so much value in just communicating like, hey, right or wrong, this is just like my framework for relationships. And then like, and not making demands, but making an invitation, like, I would feel loved
Right.
if,
Cared for.
yeah.
Respected.
Yeah, and
Right.
would you meet me there? And because then sometimes it's a compromise of like,
Right.
you know, like, maybe I feel loved because I'm like, hey, my mom always cooked the meals. I feel loved if you would make the dinner to my wife, but maybe it's like, hey, you know what? I would love to do it for you. I'm in a season where I'm working like 13, 12-hour shifts in a row.
Right.
Like, and so it's like, okay, so there's a compromise, you know, like, there's a compromise, like maybe so yeah, anyways, I think compromise and talking things through
Right.
and giving like mercy to each other, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
And I've lived with a lot of people
Yeah.
over the. Do you remember Eric Swinson?
Yeah, Dancing Eric, yeah.
Dancing
yeah,
Eric. He
yeah.
had
Yeah.
dreadlocks and
Yeah.
they had what they
Yeah.
called the House of Love. I didn't
Yeah.
have a place to stay.
Yeah.
He let me sleep in the basement,
Yeah.
and there would on an average summer night be 13 people
Are
sleeping
you
in his
serious?
house. Yeah, dude. It was like
Crazy.
people every single couch on the ground in all the rooms and the couches in the basement. There were people everywhere, right? So I was around and with a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I've lived in multiple houses
Yeah.
with like lots of people, right?
Yeah.
So when I got to one house, I asked my roommate, okay, how do we do like cleaning? Because
Yeah.
I can tell this house is very clean. It's very important to someone. Let's talk about
At Eric's house? Or
no, the different at
Yeah.
some point later. Let's talk about what the expectations are and how we figure this out.
Yeah.
And my roommate, they were like, yeah, we just kind of all just like chip in, do it. There's no like skip. So I'm like, do we do it once a week, once every 2 weeks? Because again, I've lived with lots of people. I've lived with people that are very much cleaner than me. And for
Yeah.
me, like my main thing is about respect, especially for community areas. It's like this is important. Me and you live together, and I've tried because I know it's important for you for things to be clean.
Yeah.
When we shared a room, it's like I've tried to be like, dude, let my stuff not make you more anxious. You
Like
know,
the virus. I'm trying to contain the virus. I'm sort of a pandemic when it comes to my clothes. No, yeah. No, yeah. We're all
yeah.
different,
So it's really important to me. It's not more to
Yeah.
me to like for my space to feel like uncluttered.
Yeah.
It's more important to me to respect the people
Right.
that I'm living with. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
that's very important to me. And so, and we've had conversations about it.
Yeah.
But then, you know, in this living situation I was in, they said, "Oh, we just kind of all do it," and I'm just like, "How does that work? It doesn't
Yeah.
seem to make any sense to me." Because
Yeah.
I would never. I'm not the kind of person who just like wakes up on Saturday morning and is
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I need to clean today." You
Yeah,
know?
I'm cleaning the house. Yeah.
That toilet needs
Yeah.
scrubbing.
Yeah.
It's not my thought. But if it's my responsibility on
Yeah.
this month to do it, then it's like, okay, then I'll do it. You know.
Totally. Yeah.
And so there are no expectations set, and then you know I don't do the cleaning because they were doing it every week.
Yeah.
And after not communicating, and then they end up being passive aggressive
Yeah.
and resentful towards me.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, dude, I literally try to communicate, and
Yeah.
I guess and you are not doing these things, you know. So it's like,
Yeah.
how can we? And now it's it's after so much time, it's like
Yeah.
you know.
We burned that bridge a long time ago. Yeah.
To the bottom of the river.
Yeah, and I think that's like, yeah, the value to me. That's the value of like structure. Like structure. Some people are like, I just want to like be loosey goosey and go with the flow.
Right.
There's value for that. And some people are like way too type A. But to me, I'm like, that's where a structure of like, hey, we can all just kind of chip in whenever. What that probably means is if there's 5 of us, there's one person that's like going to be doing most of it.
Right.
So that's where structure is really holds the thing that our values.
Right.
It's like, hey, we have a cleaning rotation. Like we had this at my old house here in Portland where I lived for 8 months. So it was a community house.
Oh yeah.
Where it wasn't perfect, but we had a like the big one was the kitchen. So every 2 weeks there's 3 levels to the house.
Right.
And I tried to institute some cleaning upstairs, it kind of failed. But the cleaning for the kitchen worked. Where it was they had an issue, and so they instituted it every 2 weeks. And everyone was supposed to kind of clean up in general, but every 2 weeks a house or a floor was like managed. Yeah, managed that one and once in the 2 weeks they would kind of do a deep clean, but it was kind of their responsibility to kind of like, hey, watch the garbage, take out the garbage, kind of do a few extra dishes, just kind of like make sure, and it worked. And it was like there was no set time. Typically when we rotated the 2 weeks, it was like
it should be clean then.
Yeah, but oftentimes it might be like, hey, can I have another day or two?
Oh.
But like if it like transitioned on the Saturday, it was like, hey, can you give me till Monday and I'll do the deep clean? It's like, yeah, no big deal. But with a little delay, it essentially was like, yeah, it worked really well. And still within that floor, there was typically one more responsible person.
Right.
But at least it was like it was structure that held the value for mutual respect.
But also you lived with like 8 strangers, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Are you still friends with, I forgot about that. Are you still friends with him? Do you still talk about him?
Yeah.
I would love to go. Yeah, let's give him a shout out.
Yeah, and totally the Forge, my Forge people. Yeah. So Greg moved out to the coast.
Okay.
You remember Greg?
Yeah.
And we would do, and it was cool. And we did like kettlebell workouts together, which was so cool.
And he did the Wim Hof breathing with you, right?
Yeah, a lot of the guys were already in the Wim Hof breathing.
I'm kind of surprised that you haven't talked about Wim Hof on this.
I know. We'll get there. He just softball me. I'm all about that. Yeah. So and then Kasi, tennis.
Oh yeah, Kasi.
Tennis Kasi. We've been communicating. We haven't hung out again yet, but and then Jen and the whole group. Yeah. So I haven't.
So wait. I remember there was the redhead girl, and then there was also the girl that was from White Whale.
Also, Forge, if you guys are watching this, I love you all. Yes, Jen.
This which one?
Yeah, right here.
Okay, who was the other?
Felicia.
Yes. Yeah.
Felicia. Shout out.
And so they're just cool people.
It was such a,
yeah.
It was. I think everyone that has lived in a community house, like, would agree. Like, it is. There's a sacrifice.
Yeah.
And all of us, we would talk about it. It's like, hey, there is a sacrifice to live in community. There's challenges. It's not easy, but the outweighing part for me is like, hey, I don't want to live alone in a studio. Like the value of coming downstairs at midnight and talking with someone, or
for a couple hours into the night,
or just bumping into each other, like, hey, how are you doing? I'm having a hard time. Like, hey, you want to go? So the value of like connecting and living together superseded, the reward of that superseded the sacrifice and the frustration. I would feel so bad sometimes. Like, I would be up till 3 or 4 at times in the morning and keep someone else awake, and I was like, I feel bad about that. Like, but you learn a lot. You living in a community in our individualistic society. It's, if you're willing to submit to the experience, is so invaluable.
And I think that it's something that will help, especially us, when I do get married, when you get married. Like, I've lived with a lot. I've lived with a lot of different people, and I know, like, from living with different people value different things. Different people work out, like, how their house is structured, or how their day is structured, works out much differently. And so it just helps you be more open to like, oh, whoever I get married with, they're gonna maybe be like one of these things I've been around, or if not, I'm able to pivot because I've seen different things before, Yeah. And I've been with some people where it's like, you have been like single this long, and this is why you're so stubborn, and you can't like, you can't flex with me some, like, come on, how is this gonna work if you get married to someone,
Totally.
Yeah.
And I remember like, even back when I lived in Redding, California, and living with guys, and I just remember like different times I was like, oh, this is preparing me for marriage.
Yeah, because this is hard. You suck.
Yeah, y'all was like, no.
There's can we get a shout out to this?
Shout out to my old boys. Because I think living with people absolutely prepares you for marriage, because there's like a skill set needed, and I think and Alexa and I practice this like all the time. It's
your wife.
My wife. Shout out to you, babe. I know she's going to be a guest on the show very soon. I think we practice these skill sets all the time, and it's like articulating. We'll talk about this. It's like locating each other on a map. So it's like I'm gonna help.
Where your heart is.
Exactly. Where we at, mental, emotional. So I'm like, I'm gonna help you locate where I'm at, and
Right.
now would you help me locate where you're at? So it's like we locate each other. Maybe it's on like.
Do you actually say that?
We will talk about it. We'll use that language.
Give me an example. Where are you at right now?
Where am I at right now?
Yeah.
Well,
If I were to look at you. Oh, is that when you're in tension or conflict?
Yeah.
Okay.
So or like working through. I mean, like where am I now? I'm in a place like if I was to locate myself, like, hey, I'm in a place where I'm wanting to have like a dynamic, engaged conversation. I'm wanting to be as like present as I can in this moment, and I want to like lean in and go for it with you. Like that's where I'm like I'm here, right now, and then I'm also like, oh hey, part of my consciousness is like my attention is like this is the first one we did.
Right.
Am I in the camera? Is Zach in the camera?
Did the camera add 30 pounds to Zach? Because it looks like
yeah,
it, you know?
but it didn't. So right, so like where am I? Like there's a whole number of things going on right now.
Yeah.
But it's I found it's useful in that's the skill set needed to be like where are you? Where am I?
Yeah.
Okay, and then how can we find it? Like just so basic stuff, but
Right.
challenging. Like how can we come together on this?
So what I'm hearing you say is that you're talking about like connecting with people
Yeah.
and connecting with your partner.
Yeah.
Or your roommate or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's something that I have been learning, I think,
Yeah.
in this last season of life. There's someone that I play volleyball with
Yeah.
that just, I don't know if you have those people that just rub you the wrong way, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
No.
but
Yeah.
but like
Yeah.
there's one person that rubs me the wrong way,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, I don't have the time or energy
Yeah.
to be around passive aggressive,
Yeah.
uncommunicative
Yeah.
acquaintances
Yeah.
who are not really a part of my life. They're
Yeah.
new people. Like
Yeah.
I don't have time or energy for that, you know? And then there's another family in there, and they have 2 young kids that are adopted.
Okay.
And because they've had terrible childhoods. One's
Yeah.
5, one's like 1.
Yeah.
And the mom was telling me, she was like, hey, what I've learned in these like adoptive foster home
Yeah.
things is like what kids are looking for when they're freaking out, crying, or
Yeah.
acting out. They're looking for connection.
Yeah.
And they're like, that other person that you're talking about, they're looking for connection,
Yeah.
you know? And it can be hard for me because I don't feel any obligation,
Yeah.
any very little compassion. Like, you're an adult, you know, to this person. You're an adult. Like, figure it out. If you're kind to people
Yeah.
and you're not passive aggressive, they'll probably like you, you know?
Yeah.
Especially like this group of people, and they're
Yeah.
to me they're not those things. And so I'm just like,
Yeah.
I kind of wash my hands out of it
Yeah.
and be like, no, but learning like to see where am I at?
Yeah.
Am I cynical?
Yeah.
Am I negative? Do I need
Yeah.
to eat some humble pie and like
Yeah.
suck it up, or like Jesus, he goes out and seeks people
Yeah.
and reaches out to them. I don't feel called to that, but
Yeah.
I just a kind of weird thing of like,
Yeah.
when do you connect and
Yeah.
who do you connect with,
Yeah.
and what happens when you don't connect with people, you know?
Totally. And around like, I think a lot of it is around like, I think so much of like, in marriage, but in any relationship, it's like, when things go south,
Yeah.
I think 80% of the time it's miscommunication or misunderstanding.
Right.
And I think it's someone's feelings were hurt. And I think I think so oftentimes it's so simple. It's like, I think typically we could put a lot of different words around it, but it would be like, because right, like love is the foundation of a relationship, and most of the time what's happened has been I was hurt.
Right.
It could be an expression of like I felt disrespected,
Right.
I felt like I had to defend myself, but
Right.
it sometimes I'll watch like I feel like I'll watch a married couple argue, and
How many couples have you seen like this?
What?
How many married couples have you seen?
I mean, or maybe like just in passing, like,
Oh, okay.
like whether it's on TV or like in passing, you're like watching this auxiliary conversation,
Right.
and it's like, let's say that like, let's say that. Okay, what I'm getting at is like, I think the I think the name of the game is as fast as possible.
Yeah.
Have the real conversation.
Sure.
So I think
the core
exactly.
aspect of it,
Because I think sometimes like what's happening is like it's too like as a man, as an adult, as a human, I'm too embarrassed.
Mm-hmm.
Like let's say you and me like, hey, I don't want to tell you that I'm hurt.
Right.
That you hurt my feelings.
It's not manly to say
yeah.
that.
So what I want to say is I'm angry.
Right.
I'm frustrated.
Right.
I'm pissed off. I'm
Right.
disrespected. But like
royally pissed.
yeah, I'm pissed. Royally pissed. Royally pissed. That's a key in PLC. Yeah. Yeah. So it's like sometimes I'll walk like let's say like a husband and wife where it's like she's like, hey, you know, I was hoping, I'm trying to think of a big example, like, hey, I was talking to you and like you started going to the other room, and he's like, babe, I was able to repeat exactly what you said. I was listening to you, like, I don't understand what the problem is. Like, well, I want you to be like, I want to feel like you are in the room and like, babe, I don't know, you're not making any logical sense. It's like, bro, what's happening is, you hurt her feelings,
right?
And as quickly as you guys can have that conversation,
right?
So sometimes you watch people having this like, this like
auxiliary,
yeah, almost
right.
like if I hold up a puppet and you hold up a puppet,
right.
And they're like trying, almost like and then it feels like anger anger translators,
right?
It's like we're having,
and then those puppets are holding puppets, and it just keeps being more because the longer you let it go, the more puppets.
Puppets and puppets.
Yeah,
I oftentimes feel like with Alexa and I like. Hey, what it comes down to is like, hey, like one of us, our feelings were hurt, and as quickly as we like, instead of, and but it's a vulnerable thing to be like,
right.
You know what? If I'm like 100% honest,
right.
It's not that I was like disrespected or whatever. It's like my feelings got hurt,
right?
And I'm embarrassed I'm embarrassed to even talk about that because it feels stupid.
Shame.
Yeah,
right.
You know, and so I think like as soon as that conversation can be had,
right?
Because I think 80% of the time. Let's say in a marriage, like we're not trying to hurt each other.
Right.
It's just that I missed you. Like, oh, I thought, hey, I was joking. Oh, I thought you were serious.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But no, I think 20% of the time, like, yeah, I like, or 10% of the time, like, I am trying to jab you. I'm trying to hurt you. And then that's another conversation. Like, hey, I'm sorry. Like, I was upset, so I was trying to hurt you. That was
I was a little passive aggressive.
Yeah.
My bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think too is like. When you talk about anger or being pissed, you know, it's like I was talking with a friend this week.
I think you
really pissed. We are not a monolith. Is that anger? I was talking with a friend about this. Is a secondary emotion.
I've heard that.
And when I learned that, at first I was like, no, it's not. You're stupid.
Yeah.
But then like kind of learning and thinking about, it, it's like, oh no, when you feel angry, the reason that you feel angry is because you're offended, you're hurt, you're ashamed, and that's like especially for men, that's a more socially acceptable way to express that.
Totally,
you know?
yeah.
It's not like if you're a man and you're just seen out crying all the time, you're perceived as weak, you're perceived as less than, no one wants to be that guy, you know? Yeah. And so to be angry is way more socially acceptable.
Totally.
You know? Yeah. Like, can you imagine if Will Smith started crying instead of going up and slapping Chris Rock, you know?
Yeah.
Dude, what's wrong with Will Smith? He's having a breakdown. And it probably would have been a whole nother thing, you know? And so, but in order to be able to address that, anger being a secondary emotion, you have to know what the primary emotion is and be aware of that. Yeah. And it starts with being aware of it after the fact. Yeah. But then being aware of it in the moment and be like, no, hey, when you say that, it hurts, it offends me, it makes me feel X, Y, and Z. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I think most people should go to counseling. You know, someone who will help you work through that and become more self-aware. Yeah. No, I'm 100% with you. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. You've been to counseling some. Yeah. I've been to counseling some.
Yeah, I've worked with some like a life coach. I've worked with a couple probably 3 or 4 counselors, or maybe 4 or 5 over my lifespan, and varying degrees of outcomes. But I think just bare minimum, the benefit of having someone that is solely giving their attention to you, and has a breadth of experience. You know, it was interesting. When I was getting my psych degree, we had a research methods class. And we, in the book, so it's talking about the different counseling methodologies, approaches, cognitive behavioral, whatever. But it was and I think this is what stuck with me. I think it's right. It was basically hey, your phone is not listening to us.
Oh my gosh,
folks! His phone the mic turned on and it started listening to what we were saying. It's really
They're always listening,
Yeah.
folks.
And sometimes they're like, we're gonna start recording.
It's Jeff Bezos. It's whoever owns Spotify.
I guess
It's whoever
Jeff's
owns Google's.
phone just got.
Yeah, that's what you get. What goes around comes around, Jeff Bezos. Please don't shut us down.
Yeah, don't shut us down. What were we talking about? It's like your phone starts like.
We're talking about relationships, counseling. We're talking about.
Yeah. But it was basically like, hey, in terms of effectiveness, like counseling is like on parallel effective as like a friend, equally effective as like a friend listening.
Yeah.
Like basically like that was like on par like statistically like.
So you study like. Oh, so you're saying they're equally beneficial for you?
Yeah, in terms of like effectiveness.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, that's like it was basically like as long as the counselor believes in his method and that has alignment with the clients.
Yeah.
It's so that was the
rapport. What is it?
Alignment or like a rapport shirt or like that they're both believing in the method being used.
Oh, okay.
I think I remember the research methods thing talking about like in the studies that it was like that the outcomes of counseling were equally effective as like a friend listening. And this isn't me saying don't get counseling, but like but that's been I can honestly say too like after working with a lot of counselors like it feels like about that effective. I know some people have like
which is very valuable.
Yeah.
I mean let's not drop that. Yeah. Like having friends that care for you and listening are present is very valuable.
Because sometimes it can be a big ask to ask a friend like, hey, would you so sometimes just I think a therapist or a counselor can be helpful to be like when you exchange money and exchange of value, saying like, would you sit with me intentionally, give me your sole focus? Sometimes like we just don't have a friend in our life, or we have friends, but like they just don't have the time to give us an hour a week every week for the next 2 months to like help us work through stuff. But I feel like I think either counseling or having like the on par like having a friend that is wise, like a wise anchored, grounded friend, emotionally healthy that can like just listen and hold that with you as you unpack things.
I want to say that you've never paid me for my friendship, so maybe we can change that. Maybe as part of coming on this podcast.
Yeah. So
so I'm gonna tell my counseling story. I have like one main one. Yeah. I went to counseling my freshman year in college.
Shout out to you, Dr. Himanella. I don't know what it was.
It was a lady. Wavy a sexist. Way to assume their gender. So I went to counseling, and the reason I went to counseling was because I would sit in my bed at night and have this like rage that would just come from nowhere. All day I'd be fine. I worked out 2 or 3 times a day. I'd go play basketball. I'd play video games until late, and then I would come in my dorm room, lay on my bed, and just feel this rage come from like the middle of me, the center of my person, and I was like, I don't know what's happening, but I know that this is not good. And if I don't deal with this now, kind of like you're saying with Alexa, if I don't deal with this now, I know it's not going to end up, it's not like it's going to magically get better, So let me face forward and address this, which is the kind of person I am, being an 8 on the Enneagram, which I think we should talk about after this.
Ooh, we can rip into Enneagrams,
And I didn't know that at the time. So I went to the counselor and I was like, hey, I need help. So one of the things about counseling, you have to humble yourself enough to be like, hey, I need help. I don't know how to fix this. I need some kind of help. And a lot of people, in my opinion, are too prideful, especially older generations, because it's not as culturally, societally normal for them, A lot of people are like, I'll be okay. I'm good enough. I'm fine, But it's like, no, dude, you need help. Or else it's not going to get any better. So I went to the counselor. So, humble yourselves. Let's all humble ourselves. Go to counseling. So I went to the counselor, and it was free because it's at the school, Corbin, where we went.
Oh, was it their counseling program?
Cool. Well, just the lady that works at the school. I don't know.
Okay. Because you can get with their master's program, you can get
the people in school.
The juniors. They bring people occasionally, but not.
Okay. Well, I went with the actual lady that worked there, like the school nurse, the school counselor. Right? Cool. And I was just telling her about it, and we kind of got to it's like, oh, I have a terrible relationship with my mom right now. We weren't really talking. And she's like, this is what I want you to do. I want you to write like an angry letter to your mom, but don't send it.
Yeah.
We'll just kind of talk about reading it, and then you can store it away or something, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no. If I'm going to write an angry letter, I'm going to send it.
Yeah.
And so I wrote this angry letter. We read it at the council or whatever, then I sent it off. And it's like, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But for me, it's like, I don't feel like I'm being mean.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm being open.
Yeah.
I'm being truthful. And that's one thing that I was kind of regretful, resentful in my childhood. It's like, stuff is missing and stuff is not spoken about. And I hate that.
Yeah.
I want us to be open and like actually know what's going on. You know?
Yeah.
And that letter started the process of our like reconciliation and whatever. It's been over many years, a very slow process. But like today we are a million times better than we were then, you know. And it takes slow steps. And that's one thing about counseling too. Well, okay, two thoughts about counseling. One, if you have been living with traumatic and negative thought patterns for 20 years, don't think going to counseling for 3 months is going to fix it, you know? So that's one thought to have. It's like your thought patterns don't just change overnight. On the other hand, one thing I got from, who's the guy that you work for in Bethel? The speaker?
Tony Robbins?
Tony Robbins.
I love you, T.R.
Shout out Tony Robbins. See how many shots we can give.
So many shout outs, like no one's watching. Like my mom is like, honey, there's
I don't know who that is, honey.
I got 1, 2 right now.
So Tony Robbins says, hey, when I go into these sessions with people, I have an expectation of, hey, you're going to counseling for 3 or 6 months, and then we're going to actually have a goal to work past and out of this problem. Not just paying someone $100 a week for the rest of your life and not actually make any progress, you know? So I feel like, there's kind of the two extremes, and I think that more people need to have the mind, like, I'm actually working on a problem, and I need, on some level, if I look back a month or 2 or 3, to see some level of progress, not me just wallowing the same level and the same state of being, you know? And so, shout out Tony Robbins.
TR.
Much love, much respect. I do want to talk about the Enneagram, but do we still have time? How are we doing time?
I think we have time. I guess there's no set time. I think what if we landed with the Enneagram?
Sure, cool. Okay, so real quick, a side note is Garyvee. Shout out to Garyvee. Do you know what that is?
I know.
Dude, Garyvee has been like, I guess influential, not incredibly influential, but I really like how he thinks, how he's in your face. And one thing he talks about, I think it was him, was about most kids. It could have been someone else. The younger generation don't know how to have true friendships. You know, they, as soon as things start to feel anything awkward or any downtime, they immediately turn to their phones. And they rely on technology. And so most people, it wasn't Garyvee. It was someone else.
I was like, that doesn't sound like something.
No, it wasn't Garyvee. I'll try to
hustle. I took a $25 couch and I flipped it
for $2,000.
There's no reason you can't have money. Hustle.
It wasn't Garyvee. It was someone else. But he's like, most people. But I still like Garyvee. Shout out, bro. Most people don't have true friends. And so when you're talking about having a counselor and that's equal to having friendships. The younger generation especially have been so heavily reliant on technology, they don't have friends. And they know, hey, if I'm supposed to hang out with my friend and something comes up better for them, they'll know I'll leave. I won't hang out with you, I'll leave. And so they're always in this like unsettled, being tossed back and forth. And some of the problems that we're seeing with the younger generation, the emotional health, among other things, is like a direct result of this, which is kind of related to technology. So
friendship
thanks for listening. Friendship is important.
And I think it's always fun. The younger generation.
We're so old.
I'm old, man.
Where's my pipe?
We were snappers. But it's true. On that note, learning and like there's a whole other space of stillness. Learning to step away from screens, to be still, to be with yourself. Brene Brown was just talking about this in her Atlas of the Heart. She was like, hey, like we are hungry for connection. And you can only have connection with others to the proportion that you like know yourself.
Mm.
You know, because somebody's like, we're looking to belong out here. But it's like first, it starts with like, being with yourself and like, do I like me? Because why would I expect you to like me if I don't like me?
Right. I like me, Matt.
Yeah, I like me too.
You're supposed to say you like me.
Oh yeah, I like you too. I like you too. No, well yeah, let's what if we landed with the Enneagram?
Okay, let me start by saying, for people who don't know the Enneagram.
Shout out Enneagram. Give us a little quick history.
For people who don't know the Enneagram,
is.
it has been tremendously influential in my life.
Yeah.
It has helped me a ton in how I interact and relate with people.
Yeah.
It's helped me understand myself more and understand what are these things that quote unquote trigger me or that trigger my friends and why is it so important to them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I started. The first time I think I heard about it was Becca Couch, now Holland.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out.
1,000 shout outs. Yeah.
St. Thomas comes to church, shout out.
Yeah.
And she was reading a book, and this was before I went to North Dakota, so it was like 2011 or something.
I was gonna say 20 years ago. I was like, that doesn't feel right.
No, yeah. But basically, what I am on the Enneagram is a number 8, which is called the Challenger.
So what is the Enneagram? Loosely,
it's a personality test.
Yeah.
But I would say it's different than many other personality tests because it's more fluid.
Yeah.
So I'm an 8, but when I'm in a healthy season or a season of growth, I look like a 2. It's numbers 1 through 9.
Okay.
And so I look more like a 2. Okay. And then in a healthy season, and then when I'm in an unhealthy season or stress, I look like a 5.
Okay.
5s are much more introverted. They keep to themselves. And when I'm not doing well, a lot like these last 2 years, I'm like my circle and my energy and my everything is way smaller and way more to myself.
Is a 5 like a loyalist? Is that what a 5 is?
I think 6 is a loyalist.
5 is a
5.
Isn't a 4 is like an independent artist, creative?
Right. I don't remember. 2 is the helper.
Yeah.
1 is a reformer. 9 is a peacemaker. 7 I think is enthusiast.
Yeah.
I think 6 is loyalist. I don't know what the number. I don't know what the word is for 5.
And I think,
just they're more introverted type people. Yeah.
Yeah. Keep going.
Yeah. So, so I guess with me, like my 2 closest friends are Caleb and Luke.
Yep.
Caleb is a 9. Peacemaker.
Okay.
Luke is a 1.
Okay.
Reformer.
Okay.
1s are kind of your stereotypical like type A. They want to do things the right way and have this kind of their own like in their mind moral way of doing things, and they want to do things to the best of their ability. 9s are peacemaker. They're stereotypical. I mean, this has really negative connotations, but like people pleasers. So that's something that they might struggle with. And so so knowing that and knowing the things the reasons why we are the way we are, like for me as an 8, the reason I'm 8 is because my childhood I felt like I didn't have a lot of control. And so now it's like, no, you're not gonna tell me what to do. I'm in control, you know, and I challenge other people and I think in a really appropriate way. And for all of these, they teach you how to become emotionally mature and emotionally healthy. And you can see the things that trigger you and choose how to respond and become more aware, which is like most things happen and we respond and react and we have no idea how or why. And so being able to become more aware and being able to like be aware in the moment that it's happening and then decide how to choose to act or react gives you a whole nother level of like, I don't know, not existence, but just like a way you live life, I guess. So let's talk about you. I know that I think that you're a 4, but you think you're something else.
Yeah. So and in fairness, it's like to me it's like still a little bit of a moving target.
Sure.
And so when we used the Enneagram in some of my psych classes. So
in college?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So we did like it was one of the things like we did.
So this like 2008 or 9?
No, because I did it first year at 8 to 9. Left
for India for a year.
Well, no, I went to Reading, Bethel,
right.
and then so I came back, got my associates at Chemeketa, and then finally finished in like December of 2018, like graduated January 2019. So came back like a decade later. Finished, yeah.
Okay.
So this was more like 2017 to 2019.
Okay.
And so we had to read like a book on the Enneagram, and I kind of just did like a briefer skim through it.
Yeah.
And then he gave us like 3 online tests, and I think they say like even better than a test is like read through them and just self-identify.
Right.
But like it's all helpful.
Right.
So I took the 3 tests, and like 7 popped up on all of them.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, yeah, like there's definitely a part of a 7 that I relate to. That would be like if you experience me in groups, you're gonna like that energy, that playfulness, that like, and I think you and I both operate in 7s in groups, kind of that.
Right. Well, so I'm an 8 and my wing is 7.
Yeah.
And so like it's a powerhouse of a person. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is.
So
totally.
I can see being 7.
Yeah. So I related to that, but then in the last year, Alexa and I both took it.
Yeah.
And two came up, and as I was reading, I was like, and her and I were both 2s.
Yeah.
And so I would say like, there's like the 2 is like the server, the helper, and I don't like Alexa would be more like in the classic like always gonna like remember your birthday and send you a card, like is gonna like very like thoughtful with gifts and all of that.
Right.
But when I was reading through, because that's how it like pegged me, and sometimes it's like it will like rate you like on all of them. It was like $10 or $20, so it would be like, hey, so it would be like you on like a percentage you scored like 2 is your highest, but it was like, hey, your number is in these like is in the top 3 probably.
Mm-hmm.
So I think 2 is the highest for me. So where I related to the 2 was the server helper, that when they started to talk about more like the essence of like nurturing, caring, cultivating, like helping people, like, and I would say like totally that's where I think my biggest core that I relate to. And you could say like maybe I'm 2, maybe I'm 4, but like when I read that and it resonates with me, it would be the part of like, man, like the thing that like flows from me like so naturally that I don't even have to worry is like when I see someone that I want to care for people. I want to like that's that coaching, counseling, like helping, like emotionally, like I want to like how are you? I want to emotionally connect. I want to like help you. And I do think like that like serving, helping, like hosting, like hey, I want you to be like very like intuiting, building trust. So I would say like on that relational part, that's where I'm like, yeah, my need isn't to like, oh, I'm just always going to be mowing someone's lawn or fixing their car. Like, it's not necessarily that, but it's like, so that's where I relate to it. But I will say the one, and I'll throw it over to you with the 4. But I would say all of the kind of personality tests are a helpful tool in increasing awareness. Like, because all of them kind of offer a different, like the Strengths Finder, the DISC test, the Myers-Briggs, like. When it increases awareness of ourselves and understanding of other people, because totally then it can be like, oh, like Zach's an 8. He's not trying to
fight you.
Yeah, what he's doing is he's trying to express like a core part of his gifting. So it's helpful in that. I think the one part of Enneagram that I don't love is that oftentimes feels like it focuses on the darker end. And I'm like, I'm not afraid of having this conversation. But in the same way that like as you talk to your friends, like, no, I know that classic like people pleaser or this. So sometimes it seems to typify the dysfunction.
The negative,
And I think there's a place for that, but I think ultimately what we want to like, what I find most helpful is like, hey, let's like, what you focus on you feel, what you focus on you become. Like the kid that's like, I don't want to be like my abusive father. Why did he become like his abusive father? Because he didn't think about like, he didn't have this model of something else he wanted to be. All he thought about was like, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that. Ugh, you know. But yeah, wrong. I know you're saying like you feel like I'm a 4. Or whatever
and also let me just say, you're not supposed to type other people because you never know what's going on inside them. So I'm not supposed to be doing this, but also 8, so I don't care, right? But also, I've known you for a long time.
And I will say like, I mean, I think that like, I imagine typing other people like, if it helps you understand how to relate to them, I imagine it'd be like incredibly helpful. Right.
And so like I said, like my 2 closest friends. I'm able to interact with them, especially through conflict, much better because we have conflict because we're friends. And it's like, oh, I know what they need.
Yeah.
I know that Caleb hates conflict.
Yeah.
And that Luke values being, morally living his life right or whatever, and having things in structure is very important. So if I can help him in that, it's going to make things easier. If I can help it with Caleb not feel like a conflict, it's going to make things easier. So I had one good friend a couple years ago who was a 4, and she really emphasized like taking care of people, but like emotionally, and 4's kind of like the idea of feeling like unique. Yeah. It's kind of in some ways not the starving artist, but just like the
individualist. Sometimes it's called the individualist.
Oh, is it? Okay.
I think it can be like the creative, the individualist. They want to be. Yeah. Right.
They're not like anyone else. They're special. Yeah. A lot of them don't like being typed, because you're putting them in a box and they can't fit in any box. Yeah. And so. So there are these things that I see in you with like. The artsy, the dreamer, the emotional side that you have, which is like, it just to me seems like these are typical type 4 things, and I also mistyped myself for a couple years, because first time I took it I was an 8, and then when I came back from North Dakota at some point I typed myself as a 2, which is an A in health, and then. After that, I was like, oh no, I'm definitely an 8. Yeah. I was just in a good season. Yeah. So, and it can take a lot of time, like reading through things to figure it out. Totally. It's been very helpful for me and very valuable. Yeah. Matt, as we're closing up your first podcast, I wonder if there's a way that we could, like, maybe, you could end all your podcasts. I have an idea. I have an idea. I'm just gonna put your toes. What if we ended with a story of a failure that we've had?
Ooh, okay.
Maybe a recent one, or maybe just in general.
Okay, I like it.
I can go first if you want.
Go for it. Kick it off. I like it. This is a good idea.
I told the story a couple weeks ago. Yeah. So
epic fails.
Yeah. So here we are. It's I'm in my 8th grade year of baseball at Stewart Heights Middle School. It's in Washington, Stewart, East Side.
East Side.
Shout out. And I played baseball a couple years growing up. It's a beautiful spring day. Yeah. And we're in the bottom of the 9th, 2 outs. Yeah. I'm on third base, and the worst player on our team, who literally should not have been there, is up to bat. The only reason he was on our team was because he cried his way after he got cut. He got cut, cried, and ended up being on the team. He was kind of a clown, Okay. And what I mean to say that is like, one of my memories of this guy is we were in 6th grade, maybe 7th grade. He fell asleep during class, and so the teacher was like, "Everyone, get out of the class." So we all got out of the class. The teacher set the clock forward to like 4 p.m. or whatever. And then comes in, he's like, "Solomon, what are you doing?" The school's over. And he wakes up, he's like, what? And he comes out, and he starts going to his locker, and then we all come out like, "Surprise! It's only 12 o'clock, you idiot." So he's this kind of person, right? Yeah, so maybe he was bullied some, and so I'm sorry. I'm sure I contributed to that. Hopefully there's some love and forgiveness. Sorry. Anyways, he's up to bat. Not super athletic. Yeah. Shouldn't have been on the team, right?
Judged.
So he goes up, first ball, boom, strike. I'm on third base, and I was feeling pretty good, And at that time, I was able to take a huge lead off just because of the way the bases were, the size of the field, and everything. And so first one, strike. Second pitch, he throws it. I took a huge, like 10, 15 feet lead off, and the catcher misses the ball, pops out of his hands, and goes behind him into the fence. So I take off. The pitcher takes off, starts coming to it. Bottom of the 9th, 2 outs. The tying run is
what's the score?
On my way. I don't know, but we're down by 1. I'm saying it's 8-9. I don't know. And so we get there, and as I get closer, everyone on our stands is like, "Jerry, go, go, go!" Like it's like that's probably one of the most intense moments of my life at this moment. Oh my God. And I think to myself, like, I gotta keep going. I can do this. And then I see the catcher starting to get close to the ball, and I'm like, you know what? I can't do it. And so I run back to third. And next pitch, Solomon, misses it, strikeout, we lose the game. That's the last game of our season. And if I could go back in life, there's a few things I would like to do. One is go back to there. Even if I got out, it would have been worth it. It would have been an awesome story, you know?
Go for it.
But I ended up being a failure. And it's part of what has made me into the man I am today.
No, but I love that, man. Just go, like, he's like, just go for it.
Right,
like,
right.
The spirit of just go for it.
Right.
No,
Imperfect action, someone has said.
Imperfect action beats perfect inaction
Every time.
every time.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I will say, like, even a current, like, failure, if you will, is, I mean, a couple. So one, like, I believe in calculated risk.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a difference between gambling and risk.
Yeah.
Like,
I like to gamble too.
Yeah.
I'll let your boy.
Yeah.
What's the casino? Shout out Spirit Mountain.
Shout out to Spirit Mountain Casino.
Give us some money.
Hey, but I think, like, so for me, a couple, like, I went to Russell Brunson's Funnel Hacking Lives.
Is he like a Tony Robbins kind of guy? Like, what? I don't know who he is.
So Russell Brunson is one of the best marketers in the world. So
Is that just your opinion?
no, he would be. He is one of, like, the best marketers and marketing educators in the world right now. In that tier. Some people might say, well, this guy, that guy, like,
He's top.
he's top.
Yeah.
So he has a software that helps people basically sell things online.
Okay.
But where he's different than all these other software is he has this entire kind of, like, education wing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why he really has this kind of, like, cult following, is because it's so much, like, it's sort of like,
Baby steps to get there.
yeah, well, it's like it's like university for entrepreneurs. It's like boot camp. So coaching program and live event for entrepreneurs trying to learn how to sell and market and build a business online. So like Tony Robbins, they're buds. So Tony Robbins closed out that conference. So it's always, like, very inspiring.
Sure.
And you're with, like, 5,000 entrepreneurs.
You're walking on coals at the end of it.
No, but yes, I've done that.
Yeah.
I've done it.
Next podcast.
Yeah, next podcast. So I had wanted to be in his Russell Brunson's coaching program for a while. So, like, went all in, expensive, high end, like, went for it. And then I was in his coaching program trying to build a coaching program. And so in a couple months, I was right around when I was, like, trying to get married. I just launched another business. So, around December, I was in it for a couple months and had to decide, like, hey, I need to, like, freeze this and stop it. I need to, like, hold off on this coaching program I'm trying to build. And so that was, like, you can say, like, that was a failure to complete. But it was also, I was like, you know what? Like, I went for it. I tried. I failed, and then, like, I didn't complete the coaching program, and I didn't complete what I was trying to build. So that was one. And then also, like, recently, like, hey, I've been building my short-term vacation rental business using Airbnb as a platform.
Airbnb arbitrage.
Arbitrage.
That's a college word for y'all folks.
Arbitrage. Yeah, using other people's assets to build my business. So I had taken over the Tiny House Village, was launching that, and I was hopeful that I could do that full time, and was, like, pumped to do it, and now having to make a shift to go back to work and get a JOB and a salary.
Work for the man.
Work for the man. Or the lady, sexist.
You
We got him. No, but so, like, that was, like, there's an element of, like, failure there. Of, like, hey,
Sure.
I had hoped that this iteration would, like, make it. It didn't make it.
Right.
It was a little bit, like, of a bummer, defeating, having to reorient. Like, hey, okay, I've got to go back to the drawing board and, now get a job. But it's like, you gotta do what you gotta do, and
Right.
it's so much of trying to build something, especially in the entrepreneur space. I think, like, 9 out of 10 businesses fail, right? It's like, hey, being willing to, like, if that's my track record, like, I might have to do, like, 9 iterations of
Right.
these, but it's learning, it's trying, it's taking calculated risks, and then it's failing, and it's like, that's just a part of the gig.
Right.
So those are a couple of recent failures.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
Maybe in the future when you do your podcast, you can start, because the
Ooh.
thing about starting with failure
Yeah.
and telling stories, like Matthew Dix
Yeah.
is a master storyteller.
Yeah.
Is like it connects you with people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, like, everyone can relate to. We've all failed. We all feel like failures at different times.
Yeah.
We can relate to that.
Totally, and especially because sometimes, like, podcast shows, YouTube shows, they only want to share, like, their big successes,
Right.
and then sometimes it's inspiring,
Right.
but then sometimes it's isolating and depressing, because it's like I feel like you're a superhuman or a Superman. I don't feel like we're even made of the same genetic stuff. I could never do what you've done.
Right.
Versus like when Tom Bilyeu of Impact Theory, have you ever heard of him? So he has a similar show like Joe Rogan or Tim Ferriss, like interviews the greats of just people that are like top caliber and kind of deconstructs what they're doing. But I heard about him for the first time at a ClickFunnels conference, and he sold his company for $1 billion.
Nice.
I'd never heard of him before. It was have you ever heard of Quest nutrition bars? Like
I know Quest.
Yeah, he built that and sold that.
Okay.
So he just shared his life story about like going through like crazy depression and couldn't even get out of bed and failure, and it was like he could have shared his story of selling $1 billion company as like, I'm a rock star,
Right.
I rock, you guys will never be as good as me.
Right.
Okay, but that would have like served his ego.
Sure.
But it was like he stepped up there and he served us by just saying like, here's
himself.
by just saying here's my life story. I'm an average human being,
Right.
and he's like, by that I mean that like human beings are the apex species on planet Earth. Like, if you're just an average human being, you have an insane advantage. So it was really inspiring. I was like, oh wow, like he served us by me feeling like I don't feel now like I suck because he sold his company for $1 billion. I feel like it was like stay in there, man. Stay in there. Like you'll get there. Like life is hard. Storms come. But like just keep going and you'll get there. So it was really inspiring.
And that's one thing, I've been talking with a friend this last week, we did some work together, and it's like two siblings, let's say, can go through the same trauma growing up.
Isn't that crazy?
And one of them can end up being, alcohol, drug abuser, kind of not being successful in life, and the other one can be wildly successful and happy. And it's like, what's the difference? And the difference is a perspective. And so if we're able to change our perspective, be aware of what's happening coming in or what has happened come in, and change our perspective or be intentional about our perspective, then that can help us be successful in the future.
1000% perspective. Dude, I think that's a wrap. So, Zach, thank you for being my very first guest, man.
I'm honored.
Inaugural show.
I'm honored. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Everyone that is not watching now, but maybe years from now, someone will come back and binge watch all our shows.
Yeah, starting from the beginning.
Exactly. So, basically, Mom, whoever's watching this, thank you for tuning in. And I'm pumped. I'm pumped to continue to have these conversations. And hopefully, there's certainly value to me. I enjoy it, and I'm hoping that it can be value to other people.
One person that you should think about having is Sam Matias.
Okay.
The director of Wyoming Salem.
Okay.
Because I had a conversation with him, kind of similar to this but more about race after George Floyd happened, and we had a really good conversation. So
I'm building I've got my first 8 to 10 booked out.
Nice.
And then I'm always making my list. So
then once you're ready for round 2.
Yep.
You know.
Dude, no, totally. We'll do this again. We'll do this again, and it was good. And I feel like. If anyone listens to this, I feel like we had fun, and it benefited us, and I feel like it's something that would like benefit people.
Yeah, and let me just say, last thing before we leave, now I'm probably gonna start my own podcast. It's gonna be just a little bit better than yours. So, but when I do, you'll be my first.
So I'm gonna make sure to not mention that. Yes, but totally, if you ever start something, it'd be fun, like bring it on 2, and then kind of like rip into what you're up to as well. Yeah, you'll be back.
We'll see. Yeah, we'll see if I start my own. Who knows?
YouTube, not a podcast, but someday I'll rip the audio and start doing a podcast.
Thanks for having us, guys.
Bada bing.